Hey, everybody. This is our fourth installation of our clinic series this year, MCBA's clinic series on design. And now we're doing the last installment, which is about setting ourselves up for success. So developing our programs through the spring and the summer to get ourselves set up for success for the fall. So we have two of our clinicians with us right now. We're hoping that our third one, who is traveling today, is going to join us a little bit later. That would be Chris Romanowski. Today we have Lindsey Vento and Mark Waymire with us. Lindsey's been here a couple of times. She has been, visual production extraordinaire, but just so everybody knows as well, she has trained as a band director. So she doesn't come from this just with visual eyes. She comes with it with the total package of like understanding all of the ins and outs of what's going on.
Gosh, you need to introduce me every day. Every morning I wake up, will you call and say that? So I get up and I'm like, yeah, I got it.
Yep. And those of you, many of you, I'm sure, know Mark Waymire. He spent time in the state of Michigan. He was an associate director of bands at Eastern for a while. And he's worked with, I don't know, about every drum corps on the planet. I think Phantom Regiment, Madison Scouts, Glassman, Spirit of Atlanta. He's been around for a while working with a lot of the best. And if you didn't know, he's got a PhD and he was the professor in charge of music education at Ole Miss. Oh, Mark, you're on mute, Mark.
I'm sorry. I'm so used to doing that to make sure the broadcast stays as clean as possible. I got my PhD at Ole Miss, but then was part of the music ed team at Southern Miss.
Okay.
And part of that time I was in charge of the department.
Yeah, so he comes with great background. He's a designer and a judge and does, again, no one of those like does everything in the industry. So he's specifically today going to be talking about what you can do to get yourself set up for success in the music arena. So Mark, I'm going to hand it off to you. You're going to get us started tonight and we're looking forward to it. You're on, man.
Awesome. All right. I was ready for that a specific question. Without taking too much time, like a lot of young band directors, I guess unlike in some ways, when I became a band director, I already had drum corps teaching experience. And I'm so grateful for it. And when I say that, it's kind of like Lindsey a while ago when she mentioned, could you tell me that every morning and remind me of who I am? At some point, a lot of people know me as the drill guy. And I don't like that moniker. Although I don't shy away from it, it's certainly part of what I do. My point about the drum corps experience is I had experience having to stick to a schedule, a strict schedule. And if I didn't, other people were let down, angry, frustrated, became my quick enemies. And it was a great lesson to learn. And it still took me a while as a young band director to learn that. After I took over a high school program that became very competitive, within the first couple of years, one of my band boosters, her name Mary Newman, was a secretary for a lawyer. And after a couple of years, she came to me and she said, do you need help making a detailed calendar? Because I'm that person that needs to know what's happening every day with my child. And even though I'd become more organized, it was Mary stepping in, volunteering to help me, that made a huge difference. And I would say the difference in my program, year 2 to year 3, I largely give that credit, 1, to me just maturing over that time, but 2, Mary helping me get organized, which forced is a strong word, but it made me look into the future and plan a lot more than I had in the past. And it made me realize how little time I have to really clean anything, whether that's articulations in my march, that's the legato section of my ballad for festival season, or my drill, or whatever that is. And for many years, I designed the music and the drill, eventually hired designers to do that. But it also made me, it made me think about how I fit into that schedule just as a human being. So even though we're talking a lot about spring into summer, I think the beauty of the amount of time you spend the first time that you sit down and plan out your year from September 1 to the next September, or whatever that date is for you, becomes incredibly valuable. That said, to segue that into spring and summer and how that sets you up for fall, and I'll just throw this out there. With all of my clients that I work with, as far as design is concerned, or even consulting, there's a lot of groups I consult with that I don't design for. My mantra is decide in December. And I would say a lot of people, I love that Lindsay shaking her hand, a lot of people that scares them. And what I mean by that is, I want my clients to know, or at least some of us in the design team for a school, to pretty much know in December, at least our show theme. And I know a lot of people don't want to think about marching band until it's time. But when I, as a young director, learned to set up that calendar, it put in perspective for me that if festival season ended or concert season ended or whatever we call that, not only was I having to write or design or choose my show, but I now was under a different kind of pressure. I wasn't under an artistic pressure that's very different, I think, than choosing my tunes for festival. So by choosing December, before I hired a design team, that allowed me to end festival season or concert season, or however that end of the year looked for me, and go right into, I already know the show theme, I already know the music sources, I can just get started creating. And I think that's very valuable to most designers today. So for people that have competitive marching bands or leaning that way, or do have a design team, whether they're competitive or not, I think most designers are moving more and more into this realm where they want to do as much as they can in January, February, and March, so that while the directors are getting their students ready for festival or solo and ensemble and doing those sit-down things that make them much better musicians, that someone else is worrying about those other things. Doesn't mean that I don't check in with my band directors that I work for. It doesn't mean that I don't have questions from time to time. It doesn't mean that I don't sometimes go, you know what, I think the color palette's wrong. I'm going to call the guard person and say, as I'm starting to look at music and arrange music, I'm now thinking this color palette. What do you think? I also like the idea that when we're talking to my clients, especially new clients, pretty much every student that's going to be in your marching band in the fall has done a sit-down band. I don't mean that to sound condescending, but to whatever that encompasses, depending on the size of school. Some schools are so small that they do jazz band because it works better for the 30 students or 20 students or 15 students that they have. And that is their sit-down idiom. And I think we have to be respectful that not everyone's sit-down situation is exactly the same. It allows, I think the scheduling, for me, there should be a reminder that if you march 9th grade through 12th grade, those 14-year-old boys that grew 6 inches that summer and now have size 14 shoes, and last summer had size 8 shoes, you're going to ask them to move in place simultaneously. So the amount of time you're going to need to spend on teaching them a brand new skill set that everybody in the audience can see is going to take a lot of time. And I want, if I can, to give my students music far enough in advance that they become familiar with it. So when we get to that moment in summer band, where I'm teaching people how to march, especially those who have never done it, that can be, I can choose how that focus takes precedence over the music on certain days, because it is the new skill. And without that new skill confidence, I don't know if the music confidence ever comes around. So if I can back up now just to kind of the beginning of sit down band. If I am the creator of my show, I write my own drill, I use stock charts, I rearrange them for my band. I think that some stress can be relieved if those decisions are made in December, maybe early January. If I hire designers, whether it's just a drill writer or just an arranger, or someone who just kind of helps me do those things, and that person maybe is not a band director, it's quite possible that they have a job that allows them to think about those things while I'm worried about what I'm doing with my sit-down ensemble. So that once that is over, and I understand some people have concerts all the way to the very end of school, but it still allows me time to really think about and detail out how I'm going to teach people how to move, and certainly how to move and play at the same time. it's become very, very common to say that marching band success is so much more about the process than we think it is. And I think that process is not only teaching people how to march well and how to march and play well and how to do that outside. God bless us all who came up with this idea. I think it was somebody at the University of Michigan 100 and something years ago. Literally, I think the story is the president of the university said, well, can you sit in the stands and play? And they were like, yeah, I guess. Well, how about at this place? Can you do the ceremonial thing like military bands do? Well, I guess. So we're gonna blame them. There's just so much I think that we do that's new in marching band, so that I can plan my show and have all that behind me, so that whether it's me or a design team designing, when I get to the end of the school year in May or June, whenever that is, I'm now worried about process, and the product is already underway. And I would say that depending on when your summer band starts, that on your calendar, you're also planning moments, whether it's Zoom or face-to-face with your staff, or if you're the only person, where you give yourself that hour, whether that's with a cup of coffee or at lunch or whatever, and you're going, okay, I'm just going to think through the first hour of marching band and what that looks like. And as you're thinking through, I would assume a lot of us think, well, I'm going to need my drum majors to do this, or my drum major to do this. I'm going to need my student leaders to do this. If you have an assistant, I'll need my assistant to do this. So I would then say that the next macro thing about planning is it involves other people. And it makes it way more fair to the other people and easier to the other people when they have time to plan. If you're the only band director at the school, you have no one helping you, and you rely on students. You probably also rely on the person that opens the gym, the person that unlocks the gate that lets you into your practice field. And the more all those people can know what's happening ahead of time, schedule what's going to happen ahead of time, the better. The more it's in writing, the more you're going to think about it. And I'll also say, I don't want to take too long, there's always someone out there that plans better than you do. And there's always someone out there that pretty much has your same scenario, same size school, rural, urban, or suburban, with the same number of assistants or no assistants, a design team, no design team, that is willing to let you know how it works for them. And I would say that not only find one or two or three, but maybe find four of those people and constantly expand how you plan out your program. I spent most of my day today contacting all my clients saying, where are we on the calendar? What have we planned? What have we thought about? Who's going to teach this fundamental? Who's going to teach that fundamental? And I'll tell you, at the age of 58, to me, that's just everyday language. That's just everyday action. But when I was 28, I was kind of doing those things. So I'm so glad that this is the topic. I think the calendar is incredibly important. I know I've jumped around a lot philosophically, and I've tried to talk about the people that have a large staff or don't have a large staff, have a design team, don't have a design team. At the end of the day, I think the hardest thing we do as a young teacher, especially, is marching band. And I'll say this, and I'm happy to back up my comments. Being in a marching band does not make you a marching band director. Watching great marching bands does not make you a great marching band teacher. Going and watching the Blue Devils does not teach you how to teach your high school band. It may inform you about some things you can beg, borrow, and steal. I did have a band director once that watched the Blue Devils, an amazing organization, and said, Mark, I got it. I'm just way too hard on the kids. They are so laid back and they got so much done. And I said, until you have those students at that age with that level of experience, while how we interact with our students, whether it's too harsh or too soft or whatever terms we want to use, I'm not so sure that imitating those rehearsals exactly is what we need to do. So the same thing with scheduling. I still have my last drum corps experience teaching was Spirit, and we were strapped with this responsibility we put on ourselves, and as did the alumni, to get the corps back into finals. And I could pull up page after page after page after page, where not only every 10 minutes of rehearsal is mapped out on who's going to do what, but in our ensemble rehearsals, what was happening every minute. And we always had someone who was in charge of keeping you on schedule. So it was often my friend Annie Putnam who was in my ear going, Mark, you have 30 seconds. You have 0 seconds. You're overtime. Colin McNutt is now angry at you. And it was all kind of tongue in cheek, but often in that scenario, I knew I either had to keep talking because I thought I could fix something, I had to let it go and had to borrow, beg, or steal time later or wait till another day. And I think that level of pressure and that level of habit of working with a calendar informed me as a young teacher, and it's never gone away. And I continually change how I schedule every day, every month. And it can sound daunting in the way I'm maybe talking about it, but I think it's really not. I think once you spend a year, 2 years at that level of detailed planning, you can become hooked on it because it works. Your kids will march and move better, guaranteed, without you saying one word.
Hey, Mark, I got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
And you got me thinking back to when I was like a younger director, and some of the things that I know now that I did at the end of my career that I definitely did differently at the beginning of my career. So first question is, when I was a young director, I taught a whole bunch of skills for visual that ended up we hardly ever used. Some of them we never used, but it was what I always did in my training before I came in. So how do you figure out what you need to teach to those, your band, and especially those young people, and then the second thing is, those young people are going to really struggle with moving and playing. Do you do fundamental exercises to help them move and play?
But this could be its own topic. We could talk for hours and hours and hours.
I'm covering a lot of that, so we got it too. I'm on it.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'll throw this out real quickly. If I want to become the world's greatest snow skier, who do I try to study with? The world's greatest snow skiers. So if I want to look at how to plan a rehearsal, design a show, I need to look at what the world's greatest people at that activity are doing. So if I go and watch said drum corps, said marching band, I am watching them do body movement, upper body and lower body movement, drill movement that will appear in their show at the tempos that their show are in. They're playing warm-ups in the keys that their show are in. Those warm-ups include licks, cadences, power chords, whatever you want to call them, that are in the show. The only exception I can think of as far as a fundamental that you would do that usually doesn't appear in a show is marking time. I think only as a way to fundamentally help students internalize pulse. I'm a big believer that we get away from marking time and let's walk first, because that's something we already do. Let's now learn the walk in time, and let's start to become more specific with that. And then, yeah, I'm a big fan of, we don't play long tones for 30 minutes. We play legato quarter notes, moving our feet ASAP in our warm-ups.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. I'm going to turn it over now to our next person. Chris is going to take off with the next chunk here. Chris is a percussionist. I don't know Chris very well, and I don't know your background. Juno, do you want to take a couple of seconds and introduce Chris? Oh, you got to turn your mic on, Juno. You're muted.
Hey, everybody. Hey, sorry to be late. I met Chris, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, whatever, but he's, most of his is in the Atlanta area, Cobb County. So he works most of the percussion units in that area. Obviously, his background is not just in writing and teaching, but he's also an adjudicator for DCI and BOA. So he's got both sides of the track. I always try to get clinicians that are also judges as well as designers. That's always one of my favorite things to try to do. But he's been, he could tell you himself, he's been part of the activity for a very long time. He's originally from Michigan, marched in Plymouth, even before Dave's days. Was it about 20 years ago, 25?
Oh man, I'm trying not to even count anymore at this point.
So yeah, over the years of judging, we became good friends. So we're gonna learn a lot from him today. He's Chris Romanowski, but he's known as Romo mostly.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation here. It's good to see familiar faces. One I just actually left in California a few hours ago over there. So Yeah, I'm originally from Plymouth, Michigan. I grew up in the Plymouth program with James Griffith was my band director, and then after I graduated, I taught the drum line for 4 years. When Glenn Atzett was the band director, won Bands of America twice, three times if you count the prelims. That we won prelims and then we're seventh in finals. Then I went to Berklee College of Music, which kind of took me in a whole bunch of different directions. I ended up teaching in Maine for just a short stint before I went to Japan to teach drum corps at Soka University in Hachioji. And then I moved to California because the weather was nice. So I taught Etowanda Bands of America band out there for 7 years before moving to Cobb County. And now I teach at Hillgrove High School in Cobb County. So I think the percussion thing is a unique example of how to prepare based on your program for sure. Because if I go back through my years, I'm looking at Plymouth Canton where we had a staff member for every section. I think the smallest drum line we marched while I was there was maybe 7 snares, 5 quads, 5 basses, 6 cymbals, and like 15 in the pit. I mean, we were massive. And and then I went to California, taught Etowanda. We were, like 6, 4, 5, and 12 in the front. But then I also taught 2 other schools, Rubidoux High School and Ontario High School, which were all different in the way that they approach things, the competitive nature, what they wanted to do, and the size of the group for sure. And then I moved to Cobb County, taught at Wheeler High School with Mark Hoskins for a little bit until the school here opened up at Hillgrove, just around the corner from me, and I got to open up that program with Chris Farrell and Patrick Irwin. So I've been blessed on having many opportunities to work in different environments that all had different expectations of where we should be at different points. I think one of the biggest learning experiences I had was opening the school here at Hillgrove. We had 9 total percussionists when the school started, and we always have between 40 and 50 now at this point. So that the program grew pretty quick, and it's been very stable for a long time. But I certainly had to plan for that a lot different than, say, Etowanda and Plymouth, who were just kind of already in there. This is kind of what we do. What can we do to make it better? And how can we, make the experience best for the kids? So I think the first thing I would want to talk about is not necessarily what you should be doing now or could be doing now, but maybe something that you could start earlier, as far back as last fall. We always have an 8th grade night. We invite our 8th graders into the band program. They get to, they get to come in, they get to watch warm-ups, they get to watch a little bit of the pregame rehearsal, then they get to eat dinner with the band, then they get to march to the stadium with the band. They have a bunch of stands tunes, the kids learn a street beat, couple exercises, and they get to hang out in the stands during the football game. And then they eventually, if we're doing our halftime show or if we're doing a special version of it where we may invite them down on the field and go every other person on the field and let those kids actually get the band experience for a night. They're going to play wrong notes. You know what I mean? They're going to play wrong rhythms. And as long as, I always tell them, look, the hardest part for you to get into the band program is to literally just walk in the door. Okay. After that, we're going to help you find your way. We're going to teach you what you need to know, no matter what section that you want to go into. But that 8th grade night has always been a special night. And we actually, right before COVID, did a 7th grade night, which was super cool because 7th graders came over right after school. One of our feeders is literally on the same campus. So they just walked 50 feet from the back door of their building to our marching band field. And we introduced them to the band. We show them what we do. We asked them if they want to try some stuff, brought them out. And, our area is very sports heavy. For example, my next door neighbor was drafted by the Tennessee Titans yesterday in the 4th round, tight end. But we have kids that, several kids in the NFL, kids in the NBA. So sports is huge here. We actually have a drummer that a couple years ago got drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates. So sports in our area get to the kids really early. So I think making that contact in middle school is super important to show them that, hey, if you might be a sports person and you might not be, but this is available to you. And also in our activity, we had a trumpet player last year that played football and also played trumpet. So we try to give them examples, show them that this is possible, try to get them excited about band, try to get them excited about, guard and drumline and everything. And just that whole experience by getting them in to see it early, because, it's real easy to lose half of your class to softball, baseball, and track. And, I see kids all the time. I'm like, oh, you were a good percussionist. I would love to have you. You got a good fastball. So I guess, go sign with the Pirates. So, it's just that FaceTime, not only with them getting familiar with the staff, but seeing the kids that used to be just a year or two ahead of them, like having fun and achieving with the drumline or the band and guard in general. Seeing them early and experiencing that has been really good. The 7th graders are now my incoming freshmen, and it's actually turned out to be the biggest incoming class of percussionists that we've ever had. And it all goes back to they were in 7th grade, they got the bug and they were excited about it. And it really, I think, kind of really helped save our numbers quite a bit. So, all the way back there in the fall, that's where that stuff starts. And, we do that one night, we let them hype on it, they talk about it. And then, we go into November and December. Traditionally, and I took this from my Plymouth years, we always started in January with the new kids. So we had what we called the drumline experience nights where, hey, if you're in 8th grade, bring your sticks, your pad, your earplugs, some comfortable shoes, come on over, and we're going to teach you some stuff. We're going to learn how to read a little bit better. You're going to meet new friends. You're going to learn about how we run rehearsal, the expectations, why we do what we do. And every Tuesday for 2 hours, they come over, and that goes on all the way until school's out. At some point, the drumline, and when I say drumline, it's all encompassing front ensemble and battery. At some point, those experience nights become, we always let everybody try out, what they want first. And that's when we end up with, 31 snares and 2 marimbas and, 8 quads. It's that's always what happens. So it takes a little bit of time. Hey, why don't you go over here and try this? You might like this. We start we tell them, you're a giant puzzle and you're all the pieces, and we need to find the right fit for you where you're going to be comfortable, where you're going to be successful, where you're going to be a contributor, and also where you're going to learn and be able to grow as a performer and musician. So that process starts for us in January, and I've tried to carry that with me no matter what the school is. Some schools, they're like, well, we don't want to start that early. And some of the smaller schools I was with, didn't want to start that early. And that's okay, because they were on kind of different timelines than, say, somebody who's got a BOA regional in September. So, those Tuesday nights, we try to make it fun. We let them, give them time with the kids, especially we kind of know who the section leaders are, either from this previous year or going into next year by then. And we let them small group stuff so that they're not always just working with, the staff per se. They're getting to know their friends that are around them so that, they start to feel comfortable. They've seen Romo since 6th grade. So, but all of a sudden, they're drumming next to the couple people that they saw on 8th grade night in uniform. And they're like, hey, this is kind of cool. So that's a big process for us. We started in January, we go through spring, we do the whole audition thing. And I think the big thing here is to try to make sure you're not just looking at this year, but you're looking 2 years ahead. I don't like to be in a situation where my entire snare line graduates. I don't like to be in a situation where the entire front ensemble is gone next year. So we take our talent level and we figure out, okay, this is what it could potentially look like, and we try to make it so that a couple people graduate here, these people are sliding in, and we have kind of these moving pieces over the next couple years to keep us, in a good situation where all of a sudden we're stuck with no one in a section, and that's tough because there are some years it's like, well, this person is really, really good at this, and this is where they have to go, and that's where they're going to be. And there's somebody else who, can't fit into a certain area. So we, they get stacked a certain way. But it's, if you're a smaller program, I think you kind of need to look at what's your competitive nature? Are you going to be competing? Are you a halftime band? What are you trying to do? If you're competing, you need to have a certain balance towards your wind section. I know that there was one year, well, not one year, there were a couple years where people were like getting rid of their quad lines at BOA because they said you couldn't hear it indoors. And it just so happened that I didn't have a big enough drum line my second year at Hillgrove. So I flipped it and I went all quads. And so I went 5 quads, 5 basses, and we went to some big shows and made finals and did really well. So, but I think you gotta know what type of show you're going to play and make sure that your instrumentation is there. I think one of the things I see with smaller programs a lot of the time is that they'll put like 5 snares, 1 quad, and 3 bass drums. Well, the 3 bass drums, that's a tough situation. That's, from a musical line, only having the opportunity for 3 people to play. And the balance, was going to be to that trebly end of the snare line. So I like to spread the voices out a little bit more so that we can have some continuity of line when we're talking about, how we can phrase and how we can write with the wind book. So looking for a balanced percussion section up front. It really kind of depends on your equipment situation. We're blessed down here in Cobb County to pretty much get everything we need. So I have like 5 or 6 marimbas available to me depending on what I need. I have 2 xylophones, 3 sets of timpani. I just won a grant. I'm starting a drum set school down here at Hillgrove. So we just actually Mapex just delivered us 10 drum sets on Thursday. So the grant covered all that, Zildjian and all that. So yeah, I'm a Berkeley guy. I play drum set. So I think one of the most important instruments that a percussionist can learn is drum set, because there's gigs every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You can make money right away if you can play pocket. So that's what our next little thing going on down here. But when you're looking at the front ensemble, maybe you only have a front ensemble. Some people will put their bass drums on stands down front. And some people just get rid of that altogether and go concert percussion style, and all that is great. The big thing is you really need to sit down and plan what kind of sound you need for your show. So once you're past that, if you have an arranger, and I think this is one of the biggest things that gets skipped a lot. Judging all over the country, I see this all the time, and it feels like sometimes the battery person doesn't talk to the front ensemble person and didn't talk to the winds person. So all of a sudden we've got like this big visual thing going on with like a ton of notes in the battery, and the pit is ramming, but the pit's playing 16th notes and they're playing triplet stuff in the battery, and like there's just like this big mess that you got to get through to read what you're trying to do. So at this point of the year, when you're getting ready to do your show, make sure your staff is talking to each other. Make sure that the battery person, the winds person, the visual people, I'm sure that we'll talk about storyboard. I missed it at the beginning, but knowing your opportunities in the show, like I know that in the third movement of Hillgrove show this year, it's going to be a garden percussion moment. And I know that, how we're going to split it up. And I kind of know it's like we have an outline of what we want to see, what we want to hear. So just make sure that communication is wide open. And also, when you're doing it and they're going through those things, continue to check in with each other. I think I just finished 10 years with Atlanta CV drum corps, and it was great because after 10 years, the staff was like automatic. We all knew each other really well. So you might not be in that situation where your staff, knows each other, but you want to create that environment where that communication is always open, especially, in percussion land. If everybody's ramming over top of each other, that can be an ugly situation, as we know. So we want to make sure we're taking care of that. Now, let's say your percussion section is set. At this point, I'm probably 3 weeks from knowing exactly who's playing what with my 8th graders. Actually, don't tell them, but I already know what they're all playing. So I can tell because we've had a couple rehearsals since indoor got over, and everybody's doing great. I know where they're going to be. They're learning exercises. They're about to learn the street beat so that, the first parent performance, we can play the street beat and all that stuff. So once they're on their instruments and what's coming in your future, are you going to have summer rehearsals? Yes or no? Do you have a staff that's going to keep in check with them and make sure that music is getting learned, exercises are getting learned, and we're still progressing over the summer? Yes or no? If you do, great. Make sure that, the staff there's an open communication to the students, however you choose. I know for us, like we use the Remind app, and, I send out, we have a Facebook page that is run by the directors, and we post our videos, we post our music, we post our audio, we post our play-alongs, so that they all have all of that stuff in one place. It usually comes from, a Google Drive that they can check in with at any point. And then we also do video assignments. If we know we're not going to have a rehearsal for a month and we just wrote the beginning of the show, the expectation would be for us, you're going to learn music in week 1, communicate with the other members in your section over time, maybe get together. What I love is when the kids start sending me videos, like they're all having a picnic together at the park, and they all showed up with their instruments or whatever. Or I've got a bunch of kids actually this year that all got marimbas, which is just the most awesome thing. Like my entire years of teaching, all of a sudden like half my front ensemble has their own marimbas at home, and it's just crazy. So, and they're like over spring break, they were all over there sending videos of them playing, learning their mallet parts for either percussion ensemble or fixing the indoor stuff. It was pretty awesome. So we also, going into summer, if you don't have instruments, we check out instruments. And I think that's a big thing because trumpet kids are going to have their trumpets. Guard can take their flags, rifles, and sabers home. If you don't have a marimba, what do you do? It's not like you just don't go get a marimba. And so we always send instruments home with kids that don't have them. And that would be most of the keyboard section. And we try to do that on breaks too, like winter break, spring break. Anybody wants to take a keyboard home, take it home to practice, because there's no way that the marimbas are going to learn their notes unless you either bring them into school with you and you meet them there and you stay there for hours on end during your summer, or you have, several rehearsals to get through that stuff. If they've got an instrument at home, they can work at their pace. Maybe you set like an outline of what your expectations are and how to get through it, certain chunks at certain times. But I think that, if you have the instruments and your county or your school allows you to do that, and insurance is good and all that, then sending instruments home with percussion kids any point of the year, I think, is a good idea. Now, most times I'll have them leave the resonators at school just so that they don't get banged around and dented, but at least they have the bars and the frames at home and they're able to practice. So I guess outside of that, it we're in a pretty serious situation right now with supply chain issues. If you need new instruments, it's already too late for 2022. In most cases, I know this is crazy. Felt, okay, we think bass drum mallets, like, oh yeah, just go to the store and get bass drum mallets. Felt has been like non-existent for drum companies, and it has been an incredible struggle to get the number of bass drum mallets that you need at any time, and I'm with Vic Firth, and I have signature pad with them, heavy hitter pads, but they, it's crazy to think, when you think how big our music companies are to us in the grand scheme of things, they're not very big. And we learned that right away when, I just had 3 pairs of mallets that I ordered in May last year. Like a random box showed up the other day, and I was like, what'd I get from Vic? Oh, there's the 2 bass and bass drum 3 mallets. So, everybody's catching up, but it's an issue. And I've heard from people like, hey, I ordered drums, and they're already quoting me for like 2023. Heck, I got a new car that's on a train that's stuck in Birmingham, and it's like, it was ordered in October. So if you need to order something, get it together, get it in quick. If you've got your regular dealer that you usually use that's local, make sure you're checking in with them, staying on top of it, find out what their timeline is. Even the big boys, out there, the big companies, it takes time. It's going to take a lot of time. So I would, before or as soon as possible, as soon as you hear me say this, go make a list of the things you're going to need and make sure that you get it ordered as soon as you can, because it may or may not be there. And then, we're in a huge district, so it's if we can't get something that we need, there's usually somebody around us that has something that we can, borrow or whatever. And everybody's pretty nice in our area to help us out with that. But yeah, make sure you're on top of that. I think the last thing I would say, and this goes back to getting the kids prepared. When you're talking to your team, and if you don't have a team, if you're using stock charts, make sure you're picking stuff that the kids are going to be successful with. Just because you saw whatever drum corps do it doesn't mean that your group is going to be able to do it. And just because it sounded really good when that drum corps did it doesn't mean that your kids are going to play it at that level. Oftentimes, we see like all the indoor classes, percussion scholastic A should be basic skill sets on the indoor thing. And I was judging the show. I won't say where, I won't say who, but if you come out playing 200 beats a minute, playing flam drags and all this crazy 4 mallet stuff, you're probably not in PSA. Okay. And also, you want your product to be good. Obviously, what part of your program is the most visible to the public? It's your marching band. They're going to see you every Friday. They're going to see you in parades. If you go to competitions, they may advertise it on the school webpage or whatever when you do that. And concert band is where we build our programs, but they're not as in the forefront in the community as the marching band is. So you want to make sure that, everything is dialed in to the best of your ability. You're making good sounds, having fun, and giving an experience not only to your kids, but to your families and your community that people are excited about and want to support. So I think it's important to just make sure that you're really aware of that as you're going into making your design decisions and how you're going to lay things out for the fall.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. It's great stuff. I have one little question. So your talk about the supply chains, is that for sticks and mallets and heads and all of that stuff? So get out for that as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. When COVID hit, everybody went home, and not everybody came back to the jobs. You know, when you look, I see postings for major music companies that make the product that are looking for lots of people, you know. And you know, the COVID situation when we all went home was, to some of us, was terrible as far as like what it did for you as maybe income or you know, the creative side of things. But for a lot of people, like even myself, time with family was great. You know, I mean, geez, I could, the time I had with my kids and my wife during that, amazing, you know. And I found different creative outlets. The companies that are out there now, they're trying to get back everything back online. You know, it's just like the chip shortage in the cars. Like, well, there's a Mylar shortage because it's not all made in one place. Like, this person has to make this to get it to here, to get it to there. Then here's the product, then it has to have the boxes to ship, and then has to have people to ship it. So yeah, it's just crazy. You know, sticks, mallets, cymbals, heads, all of it. And you know, it's I'm fortunate enough to have great relationships with my company, and I've been able to tour these facilities. And the stuff you learn, like, you just think, well, you know, you order drum heads, bam, they're there, right? Well, no, like, actually Remo has, like, on Thursdays they make this head, and they make what's, you know, they know they need to get stocked, and on Wednesdays they're making this. So, you know, if everybody on Thursday decides they want that drum head, well, it's too late because they already made what they thought they were making for that Thursday, and now you got to wait all the way. So, and you know, when all of us went home, you know, we weren't thinking about inventory and what we needed for the future. So now everybody who maybe needed a little bit, maybe needs a lot more, and so it's kind of overwhelming the system. And yeah, absolutely. If you think you might need it, I would have ordered it by now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Lindsey, turning it over to you now.
Awesome. Hi, thank you. I had to do slides, and it's not because I'm an overachiever. And I think it's fitting that a visual person who's also a music person, though, needs colorful slides. But I will talk for an hour if I don't have something that's like streamlining me and keeping me focused. So let me share my screen really quickly. I'm still a host, right?
Yep.
Okay. See if I do this right. It's always fun when you share your screen. You're like, I hope I'm sharing the right thing. Let's see, present. Can you see it? Are we good?
We're good.
Awesome, love it. Okay, so there's a lot to go through, but I feel like I can go through it in a quick, concise way. All of the things that Chris and Mark have already said, it's so funny how we're all on the same page. I mean, I'm going to touch on a lot of the same things that they already talked about. Planning for any sort of success, whether it's visual success or music or whatever, it has to be done early. It has to be done early. I just wrote an article for a California publication, and I think I titled it, "The Fall is Forever Away Until It Isn't." And it is, you know, I'll wait till after the spring concert. You know what, after WGI is over, I'll have a little more time to dig into that, or XYZ. And so you find yourself, it's May, and you find yourself having not planned things, but you have all these dreams and visions, but you don't have plans in place. And I've done like 3 of these with you guys before, and you know my whole thing of marching band is 90% logistics and 10% creativity. I hate to say that out loud, but it absolutely is. It is about planning. It is about logistics. It is about building your calendar. It's about a production calendar. It's about training your kids in the off season. It's all of those things. And if all of those things are done really, really well, then that 10% creativity, you put that in there and you are absolutely golden. So that is really, really, really important. I think it's important to mention that I think, again, I'm going to talk visual success, but we're also going to talk about how the marching and playing thing simultaneously has to happen early. It absolutely has to happen early. I look at visual success and I look at visual training in a micro macro situation. The macro part is easier, right? The macro part is, oh, I saw this band do XYZ. I want my team to do this really big lyrical number. I want us to be able to do blah, blah, blah. And the plans and the visions and the thoughts and the design of what you want, like the idea That's the fun stuff. That's the hard stuff. It's the micro stuff of actually training your individual kids, right? Like clarinet freshman Sally to do the things that you really want to have done. So biggest things that I've learned for individual excellence and like micro planning to be visually successful later is you have to assess the situation. It is so interesting when you're in the season, what you think about it in the season and what you think about it 2 weeks after the season and what you think about it 2 months after the season, the things that you thought you were like box 5, you're like, those judges were crazy. I nailed this. And then you go back and you look at it and you go, oh, I never looked on side 1. You know what I mean? Like you don't realize what you've missed until you go back after the fact. So when we're assessing, how do we plan for that individual excellence down the road? Assessment, study your own video. Even though you think you remember it, even though you think you know what your kids did well, even though you think you know what your kids struggled on, study your own video. I find it really funny sometimes when I'm in a rehearsal and you're up on the box or you're up in the tower, you're up wherever you are, if you have an advantage point of any, top bleacher, whatever it is, and say it's the high brass feature, right? But all the woodwinds are marching all the drill. And you look at the band staff and they're watching the high brass feature. All of the stuff is over here and it is on fire and it is a mess and feet are out of time and we can't adhere to dot or form to save our soul. But our instinct is watch the primary, right? And so when you think about your show, in the moment and you're thinking about, oh, that was really great, you are 9 times out of 10 thinking about the primary focus and you're forgetting that all of the other things that are on the field that you didn't watch are the things that need to be micro analyzed. Talk as a staff or as a design team or whoever it is that you're working with on your show. Talk about what you see other teams do that you want to be able to do. I think it is, I don't know, is it imitation is the best form of flattery or whatever. I mean, I think it is. I think it's perfectly acceptable. And I actually think it's necessary to see what the trends are, to see what other people are doing. What do you like to see? What do you want to have happen? And assess other people around you to say, oh, that one moment in XYZ's band, that's the idea I've had in my head forever. How do we make that happen? And then plan the visual moments you want to see. That's band choreography, that's drill, that's effect moments. Write it on a legal pad, whatever you have to do. I've always had an idea to have, you know, all of the rifles ripple and the batteries at the very end. And there's a battery feature that comes right out of it. Great, write it down, like plan. I want this really big lyrical moment with my woodwinds. I have some really good dancers. Great, write it down, assess the situation. So now we can go to the right side of the screen and have a written plan, I have a calendar for, and I know it sounds crazy, and this is probably why I have bags under my eyes, but I have a calendar for every one of my teams week by week of exactly what it's going to look like. And this starts, though, we're talking about now. We're not talking about in the fall. We're not talking about band camp time. We're talking about right now. What is it that we do right now to make that individual excellence awesome? I go to I'll go to 8th grade classes here at Blue Springs, or even when I go into Texas and I'll go to LD Bell and I'll go to their middle school classes in this session. You know, the time as you're a band director and you have that time and you're getting ready for your spring concert, you have that concert in April or May, and then you're just kind of, you're not hanging out, but let's be honest, right? Like the kids are like, I don't want to keep playing the same. I want to move on. I want to do something. They're getting antsy. It's almost, summer. That is such a great time to have somebody come in and start working visual things with them. Show them what they're going to be getting into, right? And so I have a calendar week by week of who is it that we can train. Right now, I'm in the part of the season where 1 day a week they are marching and playing in the band class. And you're like, my band room isn't that big. Well, go outside. Well, it's really cold and it rains all the time. Then move all of your band chairs out of the way, go find a hallway, whatever it is. Get your kids moving now. Like Mark said, sit down band. They're sitting this whole season. And then July hits and we're like, wait, aren't you guys ready to go? And we haven't made a plan to visually condition our athletes. I call them athletes. there are so many online tools. I know there's a lot of teams and a lot of people that say all of this is great. I think all your words are great. I understand what you're saying. I have no idea where to start. There are a ton of online tools, an absolute ton of online tools. Jeff Young has a whole website of where you can get things. Michael Rosales has things online with his breakdown camp that have all of these choreography things and all of these training things you can find. There are so many online tools. Go to YouTube. You can search anything there and find things. So if you hear all of this and you think that's great, but how do I do it? Go online. There's a ton of tools where you can start breaking this down. Visual warm-ups is as much as, and again, you know, music 60-40, the whole thing, music's more important, all of that, great, understood. You still move your feet and your body underneath your music. You're exactly right. The music is priority. I fully support that. However, it's not music when you're standing still is the priority. It's music is the priority. And you're moving your feet a lot of the time, or you're doing body choreography. You have to be able to do visual warm-ups where either if you use the breathing gym technique, I have a lot of visual warm-ups where we'll use the breathing gym technique on top of what we're doing, because 9 times out of 10, kids hold their breath when they're doing things that are uncomfortable. They're doing body, they're marching drill, they're doing choreography, they hold their breath. Then we're like, okay, letter A, big impact, ready to go. And there's like no sound. And you're like, wait, you play this really well standing still. If you don't get them to breathe while they're doing visual warm-ups, and you're gonna have to choreograph that in. You're gonna have to say out for 8, in for 8. You're gonna have to set that for them because they are going to assume that they're breathing. So visual warm-ups, plan, how often are we gonna do it? Who on your team, who's on your staff that's actually gonna choreograph these? Who's gonna write them? Who's gonna train them? It's so funny how so many times you have such a big staff or you're in a small staff and you have this plan, you go, yeah, visual warm-ups, it's gonna be great, we're gonna do it, we're gonna set the world on visual fire, and then everyone just looks around the room and it's like, wait, I thought you were doing it. No, I thought you were doing it. And no one knows, right? That no one knows who's taking care of the visual responsibility. The music stuff is in your wheelhouse. The visual stuff is probably less in your wheelhouse sometimes, specifically body choreography. So you have to plan who is gonna be the one, if maybe it's a sacrificial lamb, who's going to be the sacrificial lamb to take care of the body choreography warm-ups. Again, talking about step-by-step planning, early implementation, middle school classes, middle school classes, middle school classes, middle school classes. You can't expect your 8th graders to come up into marching band having just sat for 3 years. You have to get them up. You have to get them moving. It can be whatever. I mean, I don't get them to do Zumba. Is it called Zumba? That workout thing where it's lots of activity and it's a workout program. Go do Zumba with 8th grade classes. At least they're up and moving, right? And at least they're doing something that's supposedly supposed to be in time and together. Go to those middle school classes and start to implement now. April, May, go once a week, send somebody, whatever it has to do. And if you're like, oh, our staff isn't big enough, I can't go. I'm teaching all day, or I don't have someone that's able to go, then you find online resources, and 1 class a week, they're doing things that someone online is leading, which you can find all of those tools. We got to get our kiddos up and moving. It's so important. Again, like I just said, start to sprinkle some film study, little bits of pieces into your high school classes as well. Start to get their brains wrapped around, oh yeah, we have to get up and move. This is important, we got to do this. Hit the ground running once camp starts. So much easier to do that once we have understood that we can't sit for 6 months and then expect our kids to get up and move and actually do it well. And then condition your athletes. We are athletes. We are athletes. They are athletes. They are marching. They are playing. They're going quickly. They're expected to do 10,000 things in 30 seconds. They're an athlete. I love running up downs with my bands, literally like the football team, where they run in place and they go to the ground and they do 5 push-ups and they're up and they're running. And they go side to side, yard line, run, 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 then they jog in place. We'll do planks, we do sit-ups. You have to condition your athletes. We're expecting them to have this perfect frame while playing, while going 168, but we haven't trained their core, right? And so we're expecting them to do very athletic things. I mean, face it, the activity right now is so athletic. It's insane. And so if we don't condition them like athletes, they will not be able to do all of the things that we want to have done. So condition, do 1 day a week of workout, sit-ups, planks, push-ups, Zumba class, whatever it is. This is the biggie. This is where we're going to start going into the show. Like, how does this fit within the show? And I've done a few of these with you guys already, and the videos are posted, and I did an entire thing on a production document, which is like, you know, the Bible of Torah of marching band, right? So I'm kind of referencing that, but planning your music score visually, planning it visually. So you get your score, you get your music, it's awesome. You listen to it and you go, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. Push print. You've missed 17,000 steps in that process. Just because it sounds good, just because it's in the proper range for your second clarinets, just because the correct soloists are featured, that is not the only thing that matters. You have to plan your score visually. What happens is you're going to go to plan that show. You're going to send all this information to your drill writer, and they're going to go, we're moving props, right? And you're, yep, moving props can be great. Where do you want that in the score? Oh, how's letter B? Yeah, well, letter B is 4 measures. Oh, okay, well, what if we did it here? Well, everyone's playing there. Who's going to move them? Do you have alternates? No. Oh, okay. What about, you see my point, like you have to plan. If you know ahead of time, we're going to move props in the show, you have to get out that score and you have to make sure that there are spots in your music where that is planned. Same thing goes for when you hold, when you move. If there is a woodwind technical moment and you think there's no way I want their feet moving, it is your responsibility as the band director to communicate that to your drill writer. That is not your drill writer's responsibility to assume that you don't want to move your feet, right? You think drill writers are going to assume, well, the trumpets are double tonguing, probably don't want to march, 6 to 5. But you are still responsible to communicate that so that your instrumentation is set up so that you sound the absolute best that you can. You have to plan those prop moves in. I think I did on one of my seminars, I talked about using the eraser. The eraser is your absolute best friend. You have to be willing to edit, even if you love the score, even if you love the music as is. If you do not have moments in your score where there's 48 counts where somebody isn't playing, if you've got 10 props and you need 20 kids to move those props, then you've got to find 20 kids in your band that are going to be able to move those props, or don't move props, right? So either you got to plan it or don't move them at all. Guard transitions, also key, where you have to start planning your score visually. I put transitions in quotes because I absolutely loathe that word. I don't think we should ever even recognize a transition because I don't think they should exist. I think it should all just be planned and go and do the thing, right? So if somebody starts to go, I love that transition, ouch, that is a word that really hurts, because my goal is to not make everything look like a transition, make it look like it's a planned moment. Your guard director wants everyone to go, say half of your guard, say there's 15 kids that need to go pick up rifle, and that's all fine. But you have this vision that they need to pick it up at this time. But there is not enough time in that score for those 15 kids to go up to the front sideline. So what do we see? 15 kids running right at you, arms flailing, equipment trying to get stripped as they're running to the front. It's an absolute eyesore. It pulls focus, which is not supposed to pull focus, because you didn't plan time in your score of when these moments were going to happen. Again, 90% logistics, 10% creativity. You can have the best idea in the world and it can be the coolest thing that's ever been thought of in pageantry. If there's not measures in your music to do them, it doesn't matter. It's going to feel forced. It's going to look forced. Your kids then are going to be winded. You're going to expect your brass to play this really big thing, and they just had to, you know what I mean, haul backside to side one because we didn't have enough time in the score to get them properly set up, right? So it's really, 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 really important to plan your score visually. So I encourage all of you, when you get that music, you get draft 1 from your arranger, or you are the arranger. I strongly encourage you to think about visually, how does that score work for you? Not how good does it sound, not how great are my trumpets going to sound, not is that woodwind moment playable? You know what I mean? How are the fingerings, XYZ? I also encourage you to think about visually how this score is going to work for you and your success. Biggest takeaways I want you to take, if you take anything, train the visual as you would train the music, and train them together. Train them together, train them together, train them together. Marching and play, marching and play. What happens is we look really good moving and we sound really good standing still, and then we put them together and everyone's mad because it doesn't sound good at all. You have to train those things together, and you have to do it at the tempo in which your goal tempo, right? We're at band camp and we're so worried it's going to be a train wreck, so we set the med at like 132. And you're like, we look really good. But then you open your score and you realize it's a 164 and you are nowhere close. And your kids are all of a sudden feeling like they're running, and they don't have the air support. They don't have the breath control. They don't have the upper body posture because we didn't condition our athletes. We didn't march and play at the right tempo. You get the domino. It's a spiral, right? You got to know where you're going. You got to know the tempos you want to use. You got to know how far we want to go on the field, and you got to train your athletes to be able to do that very thing. Study your score with the staging and the visual in mind. It is so, so, so important. You got to make sure if you have a woodwind feature, and then you have this really, then you've got an impact right after it, but you want your woodwinds and your brass to all be together in this really beautiful, form. That sonority of sound is going to be fantastic, but you only have 2 bars between the two, but you want your woodwinds to hold, and your brass are way over here on side 1. But somehow within 8 counts, your drill writer is supposed to magically get all that together, right? So you got to study your score with your staging in mind and add counts when necessary. And then condition your athletes, view them as athletes, train them as athletes. We're asking them to do athletic things with their air while playing at very fast tempos. You have to condition your athletes. So I went through that really quick because I know we were running on time. So hopefully that covers a lot of things. I don't know, but there you go.
Great. Lindsey, you want to turn off your screen share?
I do.
Excellent. All right. Right now, I'd like to open it up for any questions from anybody here, or Mark and Chris, if you have any last minute things that you want to add to this and wrap up. Guys got anything? I'm not seeing anything. So I think we're done with this.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Hey,
I
Lindsey.
thought you were waving.
Yeah, I thought you were waving too.
So, Lindsey, I have a question.
Yeah.
So in terms of helping band directors or helping show production, stuff like that, do you have a subjective question? Do you have any, like, sometimes for people, the really tough thing for them to do is to organize their thoughts.
Yeah.
It's about putting it in one place and stuff like that. Do you know of other sources where people can download like schedules, formats, things of to-do lists, things like that, or anything like that you either use to share, you can point us in the right direction?
I do. I think where it comes to, I do a production document when it comes to organizing thoughts production wise for your actual show. It's color coded. It's all the things. It's got who's moving when, who's actually moving them, who is my trumpet soloist, what is that drill number. All of that is organized in one location. When it comes to calendar, this is again my personal thing. I use the good old fashioned Microsoft Word calendar, just a calendar, right? And everything is color coded. Everything on there is color coded. What is the guard doing this week? What's percussion doing this week? And again, we're talking visually and musically, and everyone has an assessment. And then I, as the coordinator, will go through and say, okay, well, we were supposed to implement this new body warm up. So where in the calendar is this going to fall? Again, that's having somebody at the helm organizing, not like me, but band directors, assistant band directors, somebody has to be tasked with the organizational side of things. I don't know of any online tools where it shows you that. I just use what I use. And I am so happy to share that with you or anybody. Like I can send you guys an example of what that is. Now, I mean, this is not like it's museum worthy. This is a Microsoft Word calendar. It's, you know, lots of color coding. And I have a production document seminar I did with them that kind of shows that as well.
Yeah, that's actually the production document. That was the second clinic in our series of 4. So on the website, you can go watch that. She talks about it for an hour, and she's got the PowerPoint presentation there. It's actually, it was fabulous. So that's on the MCBA website. So it's the part 2 of this series. So, and it was really, really well done.
The documentation is so important. It's like, I would rather, it's so funny when you hear, like, if someone says it to me or someone says it to anybody on the screen or someone says it to whoever, like, oh my gosh, I loved your show. You're so creative. I giggle because I don't feel like I'm creative. I feel like I'm organized. And I feel that organization, you slap on some aesthetics and you're creative all of a sudden. But it's really not, like, I don't view myself, I mean, it's fine, sure, creative, whatever. But to me, the programs that work are the organized ones all day long. It's, everything is organized. And to me, that's the most important thing. Not how cool the ideas were, just where are they going in the show? How many counts do I have to get there, right? Like the organizational part of it, like that's the stuff that I think matters.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Lindsey or Mark, it doesn't matter, any of you, like the people you talked about props, the people that are actually making these props should already be starting, yes, or should at least have some kind of idea. Because some of our people wait till the very end and then they won't come out with their props until like the end of October.
Well, I mean, I'll really quickly, I'll speak to that. I don't like to write, I'm gonna say this in a way that like, I don't sound like I'm mandating, but I try not to have my drill writer start writing drill until I can have pictures of prototypes. So if you have not sent a picture, if your band mom, dad, grandma, aunt, uncle has not sent a picture of prototype number 1 with it actually moving on the field and I know it's gonna work, we won't start drill. Because what happens is like, yeah, we're gonna get it, we're nails, it's awesome. I got this dad and he's an NASA engineer, it's gonna be great. And then we write the drill and then we realize, oh, those aren't gonna work. And then they expect the drill writer to rewrite that. It's just a whole snowball effect. So to me, I don't like starting drill until I know the prototype is done, it's gonna work. Mark, are you the same way?
I used to not do this, but I now insist that I will not start drill until, as Lindsey said, I see it moving. If a kid's supposed to be on it, I want to see a kid on it. And if a kid's supposed to be on it while another kid moves it, all of that. I'm going this week to see 2 programs that have a prototype.
Yes.
I'm going to get on that prototype at the age of 58. If I'm not agile and I can't move it, then we got to start over.
And nobody can. I can't tell you how many times I tell my husband, and he's not old, he's 52, but I tell him, or I'll do body choreography or something. And I'm like, hey, can you do this? Because if you can do it, then I know the band will do it. And he's like, seriously? I'm like, I'm being serious. Like, if you can climb this prop, we're good. You know, we're good with the trumpets climbing the prop. But no, they should be actively doing it. And if you haven't even started a prototype yet, dear God, I hope you're not planning on moving them in the show. Because that would be terrifying to me. You know what I mean? Of trying to figure that out at this point. Just to me, I guess. I don't know.
I've got a question for Lindsey. Could be for Mark. I thought it'd be for Chris. And that is with the battery percussion, the time for preparation for the physical development. Chris, when do you start looking at the battery and making sure that they can physically handle the demands of the 7-8 minute show that's out there in the field? Do you start in spring season physical activity? Do you work that into the production? And then also to layer onto that, when do you look at putting choreo in for the percussion for battery? Chris?
Yeah, sorry, I got booted there for a second. I was in Zoom limbo for a minute. So I caught the part about asking when do we start to condition.
Yes.
We actually start to condition right away. My daughter's in the snare line. She was a world-class gymnast for 11 years. She's great to have around. Um, she still has many friends, even though that she led the stretch block for a while. But we also have the visual team that comes in with us, and we've had what 3 rehearsals so far, but this week will be our first one with adding in the conditioning. We want to get that to a point where they know before they leave for summer what the expectations are. And my favorite part is always this: we set it up, we give them a list of things that we know that we should be trying to do this a little bit every day, so that when we do get to the 9-hour days at band camp, and we don't wear our drums for 9 hours, not like we used to do back in the day when everything weighed twice as much, right? We were true warriors, right? But now we got these fancy stands and everything, and so which is great, because I mean, we all have back problems these days now because of that. So, but the conditioning is it is something that we do. It is something we try to do right away, and it is something we talk about, especially before we go away to summer. And we always come back, and you can tell the kids right away that did it. There's no hiding that pain, right? When you're standing there with a set of quads on, if you haven't been strengthening your core over the summer, and you're 15 minutes into your first time wearing your drums, and you got a couple pillars standing around next to you, and you're the one that didn't do the work over the summer, and everybody's kind of side-eyeing you, right? So it's right away we try to do that. As far as the choreography is concerned, that really that kind of depends on where we're at as performers. I know, like last year we did a combined band with Kell High School, which was really kind of crazy because we only rehearsed with them on Saturdays. So we had to really plan things out, because we rehearsed our own program during the week. They rehearsed their own program during the week. And on Saturdays, we came together and put it together. We had done that because we were going to take a trip to Hawaii together that actually got canceled due to COVID restrictions. But we did the whole show together, and we had a huge moment in our ballad, which, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions that percussionists can't drum during a ballad. We chose some different implementations. We incorporated, it was a ukulele section with some vocals, all this Hawaiian stuff that was going on. And we played with these rubber tip sticks and, soft tenor mallets. And we just played kind of like this concerty percussion stuff that kind of, ran around what was going on. But my point here is that was the moment way back in January that I was like, this is going to be the moment where we prove that we can do something very musical with our percussionists, and we can make it a cool visual thing too. So we had already planned way back months ago that after we figure out how this is going to work musically, we just make sure that they're staged correctly on the field, and then we'll start to put the body in. And it was probably a month into the season when we started doing that. Once our hands were comfortable, once all of our bodies were conditioned, and we felt good about where we were at. And I say for a month. I mean, I'm in Georgia, so I have band camp like July 17th. I know that you're all like, up in Michigan, it was like September. So like, but I also get like I've got 2 weeks of school left, so there's that. But yeah, that group was super young. 9th and 10th graders mostly, a couple seniors, but we tried to give them some things. We actually developed it in our warm-up. So like when we had in our exercise book, we did some lower body things that we were working on. Like they didn't know that this was going into that, so we were preparing it in our exercise book. And then we're like, hey, do you know, hey diddle diddle, when we do this with the, lower body here, and we have this and this, we're going to put that on this 8 counts on this section. So we were actually rehearsing it ahead of time in small pieces of just kind of things we wanted to see them be able to do. And then we incorporated it all once we felt like they were ready to achieve somewhat what we could do. And it ended up being, I mean, it got a great crowd reaction every time we performed that section. But yeah, it's, you know, and the activity is for percussionists. Like if you want, I mean, you were just at WGI. I mean, it's crazy what is going on underneath the drum. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, if I had to march today, whew, I don't
There's a
know.
lot of expectations out there that we're going to see the battery people just being far more engaged, far more involved, you know, contributing more to making the whole show come to life, and making sure that they are properly prepared, they're ready for it, and they're doing it in the right plan rather than, you know, 2 weeks before the show. Hey, I've got an idea. Let's.
Yeah, well, you know, my wife, she's a color guard person. She was in the Rochester Patriots color guard back in the day when they did. I don't know if anybody saw the fish show where they had the fish. She was actually the girl at the end of the show that held up the fish. But she does a lot of the you know, movement stuff with us. So I'm always, luckily she lives in the same house as me and she still talks to me, so I can say, hey, maybe on Thursday we could get you over with the drums for a little bit, right? And you could come check out some things. So that's one of the benefits of having your color guard person in the same house.
But we're at a place and a time in pageantry where your battery can't just be pulse keepers anymore. They can't just be timekeepers. And at the same time, it is necessary, right? Because then at the same time, we're like, the battery just can't keep time for the band. But then we're like, these environmental challenges we're giving to our kids, it's like out of control. And so you need your battery centralized because you're like, we're all falling apart. Well, all the things, you know, because we want the pit not to be in the center. And so that's like a snowball of what the battery actually can do. But I do believe that where things are going, that the battery needs to be more, they have to be visually ready to go. They have to do the choreography. If you're not going to use them in your ballad, or maybe you're just going to use them at the impact, which I like to do often, take the drums off, but plan it, right? Like give them more than 4 counts to do that. Take the drums off and have them be part of the lyrical moment. Like have them do that. You're not going to get worse doing it, but you got to train it. Yeah.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. Like you need to know the count structure and how that's going to work. And I think one of the cool things that I've been fortunate enough to have really, you know, willing guard folks around my programs that will go put on a set of drums and try to move what they're trying to do, you know, and see if that's possible. You know, from Patriots to CV to Hillgrove, it's always, they always, I'm a big fan of that combination of, you know, letting the movement people do their thing. And also, you know, when you ask a kid in a snare line or a bass line or a quad line to do something, and they've actually seen you put on their instrument and try it, instant respect from the percussion section, and gonna really, you know, try to do well at it once they've seen you, you know, try. And I think that's great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Anybody else have anything, any other final thoughts here? Mark.
Yeah, real quick, just if you were to ask me to do, Mark, what is your wrap up? And I'm gonna get a little philosophical for a second. I'm a big believer that excellence is excellence. I wish that music education had a national linear scale as to what excellence means. I know that scares a lot of people. You watch a video of said band in Texas or in Indianapolis or in Japan, and we like to think that the dirt they stand on or their culture or their money is what creates that. And I think probably everybody on the screen would say, you know, for all the examples of that we can also find examples where those things were not in place. I think I'm a big advocate for it because the high school band I taught in Texas was a Title I school. We didn't have the money that a lot of our schools had. I was very young and naive at that point, and I didn't know my kids shouldn't be able to do things. So for everyone who's a band director and they're the only staff person, they don't have designers, don't get too wrapped up in the competitive part of it, or the size of your band part of it, or the flash part of it. If every question you have can then go back to your own thought about what is excellence, what is visual excellence, what is musical excellence, then that should inform you what you need to do. You don't have to use props. I know if you're going to use props, we might think it's a good idea to contact the theater teacher and say, hey, we need a big sign that says welcome to Vegas. And I get that that includes the school. Maybe it creates a tie between you and the theater teacher. And then you get it and it looks like it does not enhance your program. It detracts from it. You don't have
I love that. That was very polite because I wanted to know what you were going to say. You're like, it looks like, and you paused. I was like, no, say it, say it.
You know, you don't have to have a multiple tonguing feature. You don't have to feature the woodwinds playing rip running notes. I do believe you need to expose your woodwinds. I think about a small school that I write for, that the first time they got a score, I told her, the director, she was going to look at it and think, oh my gosh, my woodwinds are playing by themselves. Yes, they're playing the melody for Appalachian Spring, which is line 35 in their beginning band book. Yes, I get that they're outside. Make them play it with shape and tone, and judges are going to love you for it, and your kids are going to feel special. So if you're that person without a lot of resources by yourself, great intonation is non-negotiable. You're either in tune or you're not. Right notes are right notes, right rhythms are right rhythms, balance, musicality. Don't give up on those things. If the show is too hard that those things can't happen, then the show is too hard and you can make a different decision. If the drill is too hard, you can make a different decision. I think your kids learning 20 pages of drill with 20 sets of choreography, making great sounds, makes your kids happy, your audience happy. And if you go and sit in front of judges, it makes them happy. So don't let all the other stuff get in the way of you thinking your kids just can't do what Vandergrift High School did when they won this or that. You know,
Yes,
that
be realistic. Yeah, don't watch the top 12 at BOA if you're not. You know what I'm like? Use it as inspiration, but you can't say, well, Carmel did it. Well, you're not Carmel, and that's okay that you're not. Like, you got to be okay not being that. You got to be okay not being XYZ. You can use it for inspiration. It can spawn ideas. But I would much rather hear my clients go, well, but Carmel did it. Well, have you ever toured them and watched them rehearse? How about you take notes at rehearsal, not take notes from their show? Right? Like, I don't know, but amen, Mark, amen.
Yeah, there most jobs in the United States of America are in rural or urban settings. Most programs are small compared to those things that we look at on video, and those teachers are incredibly important. So don't devalue yourself and be really good at what you do. And if you want to go to a larger school, that opportunity may happen. All kids deserve great teachers that know how to teach excellence and allow you the opportunity to be excellent at something. We do things we like being good at.
All right, I don't know that there's a better way to end this evening than what Mark just. So I think we're gonna end it right there. And thank you very much, Chris, Mark, and Lindsey, for being with us tonight and having a great final session here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
For having us, you
Good
guys.
seeing you all.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you,
night, everybody.
It was
Good night.
excellent. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good to see you all.
Good to see you all.